Good evening, everyone. Happy Friday. I hope everyone is well tonight. We have a really good webinar scheduled about Section 8 vouchers and your right as a tenant. I would like to introduce our speaker for tonight, which is Robert Desir, who's an amazing attorney at Legal Aid Society and a great help to Palante. Legal Aid Society has partnered with Palante for years, and we are so glad for Robert to join us tonight. So by further ado, I'm gonna give it over to Robert so he can start his presentation.
Thank you very much, Jakari, and thank you, Palante, for inviting me to participate in this event. It's always great to meet with the tenants and speak about different Section 8 issues and tenancy issues in general that affect so many people. For myself, in this presentation, I'm going to focus on Section 8 as administered by the New York City Housing Authority. And, we'll focus on people who are already participants in the program. So therefore, I won't speak to issues such as applying, the issuance of a voucher term, and denial of assistance. So what I'll focus on is your rights as a participant, issues that arise around lease renewal, recertification, housing quality standards, and termination. But one thing I will note is that everyone should be aware that there are city and state laws protecting against discrimination based on your source of income. So, because the Section 8 housing voucher program allows you choice to move, people may find that they may be going to another apartment and looking to use their voucher there. They should be aware that landlords generally can't discriminate against them because they are using a voucher to pay the rent. They can't say that we're not going to accept you on that basis. But one thing I will speak to briefly is immigration, because there's been some activity in that area. So starting with tenancy rights, the essentials of the program are that it entitles its participants to safe, decent, and sanitary housing. Tenants are allowed to add eligible family members to the household, of course, subject to a criminal background check for any members over 16, subject to an eligible immigration status. You're also allowed to get succession for eligible family members. Who's eligible for succession is different from who can be added to the household. So people should be aware of that. Like, for example, if there is a child who is adopted into the household or a foster child, while that child may be able to live in the household for the time that the head of household is there, they can't succeed to the voucher as a natural born child would be able to. People should also note that in the Section 8 program, typically the tenant is only responsible for the tenant share of the income, which is 30% of the household's income, and they're never required to pay anything more than that. When landlords participate in the Section 8 program, one of the documents that they sign is one agreeing that they will not seek any other rents from a tenant. A lot of times you hear about the side deals that are struck. Those are unenforceable, and landlords can't seek that money in court or in any other forum from a tenant because they're definitely against the rules of the program. I mentioned protection from unlawful discrimination, not only source of income discrimination, but that goes towards disability discrimination, race discrimination, and other forms of other categories that are protected under the Fair Housing Act. Another important feature is that before any action is taken against a participant, whether it's a change in the rent, whether it's a termination, they're entitled to notice they're entitled to a hearing to challenge the adverse decision. So in addition to tenants' rights, obviously there are a number of responsibilities that participants have, violation of some of which can lead to termination. The most common requirements are obviously to pay the tenant share timely, to comply with the various lease terms, in addition to the requirements of the program. Whatever lease is signed with the landlord, tenants have to comply with those terms. Failure to comply can lead to termination. Tenants must maintain housing quality standards to the extent that there are issues that are within their control. There are some issues that arise that would be a landlord's responsibility. However, there are instances where a failed inspection can be a result of a participant tenant's failure to remedy a condition. This can also lead to termination, so it's important that that is understood. Participants must complete an annual recertification. I'll get more into that a little later, but generally it's a yearly requirement of certifying your income and who is in the household. In addition, any changes to the family composition must be reported timely. That is particularly important with respect to income changes, where there is additional income in the household. Someone gets a job, or someone income changes to where they are making more money than they were. This is important because the subsidy amount is based on the household income. So if there's going to be a change in that, it should be reported timely. And also any other information that is necessary for administration of the program should be reported timely. Participants have to notify NYCHA. In this case, I'm talking about NYCHA, but for Section 8, any public housing authority that's administering the voucher must notify them before moving from the subject unit. Typically, there has to be a situation where you can move, meaning that you're not in the midst of a lease. There may be circumstances where, because of health and safety concerns, someone has to move right away. Those are, of course, those are accounted for. Typically, however, before there's any move, the public housing authority would have to be notified. You also must report any absence from the household that is going to last more than 90 days. So turning to lease renewals and the annual recertification. Participants have to complete the annual recertification and report timely changes at least once a year. There can be instances where you would be reporting changes, as I described, before the year is up, but at a minimum, once a year, there's an annual recertification process where the housing authority will notify you at least 150 days in advance of what's the anniversary date, which is the date that the subsidy commenced. Failure to recertify can result in termination. Currently, the annual recertifications can be done online by way of the self-service portal. Anyone who doesn't have internet access should contact the Housing Authority's Customer Care Center to make arrangements to complete their annual recertification. So with the annual recertification, you have to submit an affidavit of income for all individual household members. Each family member that's over 18 must complete a third-party verification form. That form is for NYCHA to cross-reference with any agencies for any income that may exist, just to check against what they receive. Also, any other supporting documents for that would help determine what the income is. Many people don't have traditional traditional jobs where they receive a W-2 and may need like other documentation to show their employment and show what their wages are. So once the recertification is completed, the documents are turned in. There is the annual inspection of the apartment. You're issued a new voucher change notification, which tells you what the tenant share will be going forward. The certification is typically made to coincide with the expiration of a lease so that the terms run together. As I mentioned before, all apartments are, and I'm now turning to the issue of repairs. All program housing must meet housing quality standards. Housing quality standards are set by the federal government, and what they do is, and by federal regulations, and what they do is provide the minimum standard for a household. The local housing authorities are free to increase the standards, but this serves as a floor. And generally the regulations consist of 13 key aspects of housing quality performance requirements and acceptability criteria to meet each performance requirement. HQS includes requirements for all housing types, whether it's the single family housing, multifamily housing, manufactured homes, a single room occupancy, shared housing, or group residency. It speaks to issues such as the sanitary quality of the facility, what food preparation space and is available, what space there is for disposal of refuse, trash. Speaks to the space and security of the environment, lighting and electricity, the air quality, water supply, looks at the presence of lead-based paint, means of ingress and egress, sanitary condition, and smoke detectors and such. So within that, there are a number of subcategories, but these are kind of the basic subjects that are part of the inspection. So as I mentioned, these inspections can occur in 3 different instances. The initial inspection when someone moves into a new apartment and the initial lease process is happening. It happens every year at the annual recertification as part of that process. And in some instances, there can be special inspections where there are compliance inspections or quality control inspections, or inspections as a result of a complaint from the tenant or the owner. With respect to housing quality standards, if the housing authority conducts an inspection and finds that there is a condition that falls short of the standard, they will suspend the subsidy. And after 30 days, if the they'll initially suspend the subsidy, but won't suspend payment right away and give an opportunity to cure the defective condition. So if after 30 days the condition is not remedied, then payment will be suspended. After that, there's an opportunity to restore the subsidy if the repair is made and and it's verified. At this point, the housing authority has been doing different things to account for the current circumstances in the name with respect to verifying that conditions have been taken care of. They're not inspecting as much as they have been in the past, and have been relying more on verifications from tenant and landlord that repairs have been completed. If, however, the condition is not, the repair is not made and the repair is not verified, the HAP contract will automatically terminate 180 days after the last subsidy payment is issued. So from the time that the payments stop, if 180 days pass and no repair has been made, then the HAP contract will terminate. After that, the tenant is moved to what's called Code 99, which is move out termination. From that point, the tenant has 1 year to either request a transfer voucher, or if the landlord makes the repairs, they can be restored. However, in that situation, the restoration would only be going forward, meaning that the landlord would not be able to collect any subsidy amounts that were lost during that period. So in addition to that, there are a number of different issues that can arise that can lead to termination. Some are, if there is a violation, in some instances, the termination is mandatory. In other instances, it's discretionary. And there can be a hearing to determine whether or not the termination will happen. So in the category of what would lead to a mandatory termination, you have issues like if no one is able to verify an eligible immigration status, if any household member is subject to a lifetime registration under a state sex offender registration program, if the family is evicted from the apartment for serious or repeated lease violations, if the family permits someone who is ineligible to reside in the apartment. As I mentioned before, if 180 days have passed since the last housing assistance payment was made. And there are a number of other reasons, but these are the typical things that I've seen in my practice that lead to mandatory termination. On the side of what is discretionary termination and not necessarily automatic termination, there are things like misrepresentation of income, tenant-caused HQS violations, failing to provide NYCHA with a copy of required documents regarding income or any eviction notice that received from the landlord, any drug-related activity, violent criminal activity, and such can lead to termination as well. However, in any of these cases, there are rights that do attach to the voucher and that do attach as a participant in the program, and NYCHA has to take steps before they can terminate assistance. One, they have to notify you of their intention to terminate the subsidy. They have to provide the reasons that they plan to terminate the subsidy. They have to notify the tenant of a right to an informal conference or an impartial hearing. They must comply with the Williams consent judgment, and that's a judgment that is based on a lawsuit that was brought in the 80s that challenged the termination procedure of the housing authority. From that case resulted a consent decree by which the housing authority agreed to follow a set of procedures, which I've outlined before terminating a subsidy. So that is the breadth of the presentation that I have. I wanted to, just kind of give a general overview of the program, rights and responsibilities. I imagine that there are questions that people may have. So if this is the appropriate time, I'll answer those questions. Do note that while I'm an attorney, I'm not your attorney. So, I don't venture to give legal advice to anyone. I can speak to general situations, but I certainly don't want to give the impression that I'm giving anyone legal advice that they should act on. If you have, a specific issue that you're facing, you should speak to the folks at Polenta, and they can point you in the right direction. But with that, you know, I'm open to any questions that anyone may have.
Fantastic. Takati, should we, I can start reading some of these?
Yeah, but
Sure.
I have a question actually. So what is usually like the waiting process for a voucher? Like how long does it usually take?
Well, it depends on a number of things. You know, one, there are different categories that people are in, and some have priority over others. For example, people who are currently in shelter are in a high priority category. People who may be fleeing domestic violence situations, or you know, have lost their home due to you know, fire or destruction and such, people in overcrowded situations. So just to give you an idea, there are a number of different categories that people are in. The waiting list is very long. You know, people have been on the waiting list for years, in some cases close to decades. At different times, the Housing Authority will open the waiting list, and you know, as I said, they'll go through the different categories. So it's really difficult to say how long any individual person will be waiting. In you know, my practice, where you know, I did a lot of housing court work, and I would encounter people who were maybe in a holdover proceeding, or in you know, a case where there wasn't any right to remain in the apartment. So the conversation would go towards, well, what are your options, you know, as far as, you know, rehousing? And, you know, if people mentioned that they were on the Section 8 waiting list, that was not really something looked at as like a short-term solution, like something to rely on that would, you know, come through in a way that would get them housed immediately.
Okay. All right.
Great. So we'll start off with our first question here. I live in NYCHA. I don't have Section 8, but my development will be converting to RAD and RAD, and we were told that now we will convert from Section 9 to Section 8. I want to know how this will affect my household because I do not qualify for Section 8 because of my income.
Yeah, I guess that's one of those questions that gets into specifics about household income. My understanding about the RAD was that most would be converted to Section 8. So I'm not sure how, I guess I'm not sure of like the circumstances that you're in. So I would advise to speak with folks at Polenta, so as to you know, put you with someone who can you know, kind of go through what the exact circumstances are to give you the proper advice there.
My medical expenses have gone up $500 per month due to a few surgeries. How is the additional amount calculated?
If there's been any change in income or expenses in the household, there are a number of categories that call for exemptions that would lower what your income is, and you know, therefore lower your share. So you know, while I would suggest, if there, you know, just generally, if there's like a change in circumstances as you describe, to contact the Housing Authority and request an interim recertification, pointing out that you've had these medical expenses, and you know, whether or not they will treat those as something that's subject to an exemption.
I reside in an LIHTC building and have not had an inspection in 3 years. There are no issues. Comment. not a question.
Okay, yeah.
NYCHA does not have a homeownership program for Section 8. Could I participate in a homeownership program in another city that has a homeownership program?
You know, with respect to a home ownership program, I think, you know, there are a number of them out there. And you mentioned in another city, you know, there's city and state, you know, administered programs. And all of them have different rules for eligibility and requirements for participants. You know, whatever jurisdiction that you're targeting, I would suggest that you perhaps contact the agency that administers the program to find out where you can review the eligibility rules to see if you qualify and you know, what you have to do to participate and take advantage.
And I have a question in Spanish, which I'm going to read over the Spanish channel. And if you're listening in English, just stay on English. One moment. Si mi sección 8 está con mi hijo y yo me quiero mudar sola, ¿se puede compartir la sección 8?
I think you're talking about a household being split and whether a split in a Section 8 household can lead to 2 vouchers being issued. Generally, that generally the head of household is the one who has the benefit of the voucher, and whoever is in the household with that head of household can benefit from the voucher as long as they are eligible. However, if someone leaves the household, there is no provision that allows them to be issued their own voucher.
Hello, I am advising a client whose mother is a tenant-based voucher holder and is looking to relocate to another unit pursuant to a reasonable accommodation request. However, if my client is not added to that voucher, what is the most efficient way he can be added as a family member? Can he do so via the self-service portal? What about the process for adding a child under 18 who may just be a temporary occupant of the household, not necessarily tied to a lease? Thank you so much.
So with adding family members to the household,
regarding a NYCHA, regarding a NYCHA administered tenant-based sorry, I'll read that slower, more slowly for the interpreter. Regarding a NYCHA administered tenant-based S8 voucher.
Okay. You know, with respect to adding someone to the household, what is required is to request permission from the housing authority, whether it's permanent or temporary. You know, if it's someone under a certain age, there won't be a background check, but I think anyone over 16 is subject to a background check to determine if they meet eligibility criteria. But it really, any request about household change starts with making a request via the portal to add a family member, whether it's temporary or permanent.
And just another reminder, we do have the Q&A. If you haven't used it yet, or if you have not been able to see some of the chat messages that I'm putting through, just to feel free to use that Q&A. Favor de utilizar el Q&A, o sea, para plantear sus preguntas en español, para poder, para que se I'm sorry, if NYCHA calculated rent incorrectly for one or more years, can resident recoup the overcharge? If so, how?
Any issues with how, any issues with how income is calculated? If anyone has any such issue, they should request a hearing to challenge the determination. If there is a hearing and it's found that the calculation was incorrect, then I don't know if a cash award is issued, but there is some concession that obviously would be made to correct for the error. But any issues with how income is calculated should be brought to the attention of the Housing Authority in the form of requesting a hearing.
How does NYCHA acquire new S8 vouchers? Through attrition, or does HUD issue a number per year?
The what vouchers are going to be issued is, yeah, it's subject to attrition. It's subject to what HUD decides to appropriate. That can be different in any fiscal year. So it was really determinant on the political winds in Washington. So it's hard to determine what number of vouchers would be available in a given year. It has not been consistent.
RAD, this is just an added comment or from a previous RAD convertees would have to pay 30% of income no matter how much one makes because of the conversion from Section 9. This is someone sharing a comment. Another comment, I lost my voucher in 2009 because of a health situation, and I never was able to receive an appeal. I was never able to receive appeal this HPD case. I have been on the waiting list for NYCHA for 7 years. My daughter need housing. We live in a Section 8 layered with LIHTC and home programs. Each program has different requirements. Can our management hold us accountable for all the rules in all the programs on the building at the same time? Also, where could we locate data on properties with several programs, blended property, and their efficacy, please?
Typically, you would be subject to the requirements of a program that you're a participant in, and also subject to the requirements of the lease agreement with the landlord. For finding out about the different programs that affect the building, like the LIHTC, I would suggest going to the City Department of Finance website and going through what's called ACRIS, ACRIS, which is where property records are recorded. And that's where you may find the different regulatory agreements that a building is subject to.
If anyone who lives in a Section 8 apartment, which includes a project base, more than 30 days must be included on the lease. As you stated, this could be accomplished on the self portal.
That's right.
Good evening to all. Section 8 question. My question is, when you submit your income to recertification, why do they use net pay? Also, due to COVID-19, I'm on unemployment. I did the recertification, and they told me they don't use the extra money the government is giving, but then your rent goes higher. I'm making sense, which just trying to voice my question. Not sure if I'm trying to make sense of this.
My understanding is that the housing authority was not counting stimulus funds towards the income calculation. I'm not sure if that's the question being posed. If
Yes,
anyone understands the question better, maybe I'm not understanding the
yes,
question.
Elba, please feel free to follow up on that. And while we move on to another one, and a request to repeat what you were saying about the Section 9 to Section 8 conversion.
Well, oh, that was an initial question, and I think that what I was wondering is, I think the caller mentioned that their income did not qualify them for Section 8. My understanding is that with the conversions, people are not responsible for only responsible to pay 30% of their income towards the rent. However, I did mention that the individual who left that message should contact Polenta and kind of review their documents to get a more thorough examination of their situation.
I live in NYCHA development where people smoke in the hallways, which comes into my apartment. NYCHA smoke policy was implemented, but it seems never enforced. Call center is never helpful on resources on where to report unwanted smoke. Is there a policy?
Well, this goes to, I think, NYCHA Public Housing. And, what I know is that there are, obviously rules against smoking on the grounds, which is, I don't know if it's grounds for termination, but, it is strictly prohibited. So, to the extent that that's not being enforced, that's unfortunate. I'm not sure exactly how to address the lack of enforcement there, but it's something that shouldn't be happening. I think that there are the ban extends to the grounds even outside. So obviously people shouldn't be smoking indoors. I wish I had a better answer for you, but it seems like it's an enforcement problem there. I mean, the rules are in place to address it.
Well, thank you. I think that sort of concludes the line of questions that have come in. We may get a couple more or not, but Jakari?
All right. Well, yeah, if you have any more questions, just hit the Q&A box. But for now, thank you everyone for joining us tonight. Thank you all for all the questions. I hope everyone was able to get their question answered tonight. Thank you, Robert, from the Legal Aid Society, for being a great speaker tonight and being such a great help to everyone. Thank you to Daniel, our translator, and Robert, our Zoom tech and translator as well. If you have any questions or you want to follow up with us about tonight, you can call us at 212-491-2541, or you can email us at palante@palanteharlem.org. And if you want to watch this webinar or previous webinars of ours, you can go to our YouTube channel, and you can visit our website as well. And also we have a satisfaction survey right now going on. So if you could just take a few moments just to fill that out, so we could just, have a better understanding of how tonight's webinar went from the attendees' perspective, that would be great. I think we have a few more questions.
So yeah, oh great. So yeah, and we owe about 40% of those who are present have given some answers. We'd love to have a few more punch in the answers to our survey questions just to get some more data. And let's see. Well, my question is, before COVID-19, I was paying a certain amount of rent. This is the follow-up from the previous. I was paying a certain amount of rent due to my income. Once the pandemic hit, it was time for my recertification. I'm working less hours and I'm on unemployment, but my rent went up.
Yeah, that sounds odd. The program is based on your income and the rent being affordable, and affordable being 30% of your income. Participants should not be paying more than that towards the rent. So I'm not sure why, with a decrease in income, your share of the rent increased, even if there was a lease renewal, even if there was a rent increase, due to a lease renewal. The tenant's share should be based on their income at all times. So, that sounds like perhaps you can request, an audit of the calculations that they use to decide what the share would be, and perhaps there's some error there that can be challenged. But I don't know why that would be. That sounds bizarre.
Can we repeat the email and phone number along with the YouTube channel?
Okay, the email for Palante is palante@palanteharlem.org. And the phone number is 212-491-2541. And our YouTube channel is the Palante Harlem 1 at YouTube. Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm.
Does NYCHA, where can I go to get help with my HPD case, even if the case is 9 years old?
I'm not sure what the issue is with the HPD case. If it was a termination, typically any action that's taken by an agency, there is a time frame within which you have to challenge it. There'd be a statute of limitations. 9 years sounds like a long time. I mean, there'd be a statute of limitations, but there can be some exceptions. So it's hard to answer that question with the information that is given.
Oh, I think we're just having another request for the information. Jakardi, they missed the whole phone number.
Okay. Again, the Palante phone number is 212-491-2541. And the email is palante@palanteharlem.org.
And yep, if you just jump onto the chat, you'll be able to scroll a little bit and see that information that was posted there.
So was that all the questions?
Does NYCHA have a cap on the rent for each apartment size?
Yes, there's an occupancy standard and a payment standard. So based on the family composition, a family would be told that they should get a certain amount of a certain amount of bedrooms apartment, whether it's 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, and then corresponding to that would be the payment standard that's also based on the family size. So for a family of 1, the rent can be a certain amount. Family of 2, 3, and going further up in the family size. So it's kind of a sliding scale, and it's the parameters that people have to work with. One thing I'll note is that, you may encounter a situation where an apartment that is larger than the size that you're eligible for is at a rent that's lower than your payment standard. So a participant would be free to take such an apartment. Like, for example, if I don't have the list in front of me, but let's say for a family of 3, you're allowed a 2-bedroom apartment, and your cap is $1,600. Well, if you see a 3, or if you happen to find a 3 or 4-bedroom apartment that's under that's at $1,600 or under, then you're free to take that apartment.
Okay. That I think leads, that's sort of concludes our questions, I think.
Okay, so thank you everyone again for joining us. Thank you, Robert. Thank you to our translators, and everybody have a good night. And once again, the YouTube to view the previous webinars are the Palante Harlem 1 at YouTube. And you also can view it on our website. So yeah, everybody have a good night. Thank everybody for coming and watching. Everybody enjoy the rest of their Friday.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Robert. Thanks,
Thank you.
Shakati and Daniel.
All right, thank you.
Have a good weekend.